I never believed in near-death experiences until I had one. My name is Jackson Cole. I served 2 tours, saw things I'll never forget, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened on April 17th, 2024. During a surprise drone strike, I was killed instantly. No pain, no warning, just silence. But in that silence I woke up somewhere else, not in darkness but in revelation. I stood face to face with Jesus Christ, and what he showed me about 2025. I can't keep to myself. He said to warn the world, that time is shorter than we think. April 17th started like any other patrol in northern Syria. Hot, quiet, tense. I was leading a 6-man team just outside a desert village that intelligence flagged for unusual electronic activity. We had no idea what that meant. No one ever really does. But orders are orders. You suit up, you shut up, and you go. But something felt off that morning. The air didn't feel right. The local kids who usually waved at us were nowhere to be seen. The dogs weren't barking. Even the wind felt like it was holding its breath. "Stay sharp," I told the guys. "Something's not right." The village was silent. We walked single file, checking corners, scanning rooftops. I was the point man. The sky was clear. No planes, no birds, no sound. And then it happened. A whistle, like pressure releasing. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. I looked up. Nothing. I blinked. Then I was gone. Not unconscious. Gone. Gone from Earth. Gone from the noise. Gone from the war. I didn't feel pain. I didn't even hear the explosion. Later I'd find out that I died instantly, my body thrown 30 feet by the blast. But I didn't know that yet, because in that split second, I was no longer on the battlefield. I was somewhere else. The moment I left my body, I didn't even realize I had died. It was like stepping out of a movie. One second I was gripping my rifle, the next I was standing barefoot in an open field. A field with no sky, no sun, yet it glowed. I looked down. I had no gear, no helmet, but I didn't feel exposed. I felt stripped of everything unnecessary. I turned around, trying to get my bearings. The field went on forever, rippling like water, yet solid beneath me. Then I heard something behind me, a presence. I spun around. There was a figure, not walking, not flying, just appearing, tall, radiant, dressed in something that shimmered between light and cloth. No wings, but more power in his gaze than in every weapon I'd ever seen. "You're not lost, Jackson," he said with a voice that filled me. "You've just been reassigned." My heart froze. Who are you?" But I already knew. I am. Everything inside me cracked open like glass under pressure. This wasn't a vision. This wasn't my brain firing as it shut down. I was with Jesus Christ. "You died in obedience," he said, walking toward me. "But I allowed it so I could speak to you, for them." "Them?" I asked. "The ones still fighting, the ones blind to what's unfolding in 2025. I didn't breathe. Couldn't." "You will return, but first you must see what is coming." And just like that, the field peeled back like paper, revealing something behind it. Time itself began to unravel. From that realm of light, I was suddenly watching my own death, not from memory, but from above. I saw the drone, sleek, silent, invisible to the human eye. I saw the signal sent from miles away, thousands of feet in the air. A trigger pulled from a metal room across the world. One press, one code, one decision, then fire. I watched myself walk, laugh, blink, and then vanish. It was over in an instant. But what shocked me wasn't the attack. It was what I saw after the explosion. I saw spirits, dark ones, creeping through the smoke, weaving between the bodies. They weren't attacking, they were collecting. "What are those?" I asked, trembling. Jesus stood beside me, not flinching. Souls caught in confusion, dying without direction, men who died for the wrong kingdom. That phrase, wrong kingdom, hit me hard. I thought I was fighting for good. I thought we all were. "You were," he said, answering my thoughts. "But only those aligned with my kingdom are gathered into glory." Then he showed me something even harder to witness. Soldiers, men I knew, calling out, but not in words, in regret, in panic. Their spirits not rising, not falling, just stuck, trapped in some veil. "They died full of pride, but empty of purpose," he said. "Then why me?" I asked. "Why am I here?" Jesus turned, and for the first time his expression changed, not to anger, but to urgency. Because in 2025, the world will enter a war it doesn't recognize, a war of truth, a war of deception, and I need voices who know how to fight. "I'm just a soldier," I whispered. "Exactly," he said, and then he showed me the doorway to something far greater. That doorway wasn't made of wood or stone. It was made of memory, of every choice I'd ever made, every lie, every prayer, every moment I looked up at the sky and asked if God was even real. It stood before me like a mirror, but it didn't show my face. It showed my soul. "You must pass through," Jesus said, "but only what is eternal can enter." I stepped forward, and as I did, I felt pieces of me fall away. My anger, my shame, my medals, my guilt. Like old armor I didn't need anymore. On the other side was light, yes, but not empty light, living light. I could feel sound, I could taste memory. I was surrounded by beings, not people, not angels, but witnesses, saints, martyrs, ordinary believers who had died in faith. They nodded as I passed. One whispered, "Tell them, Jackson. Time is no longer what it seems." Another said, 2025 begins what Revelation called birth pains." I turned to Jesus. "What's happening in 2025? He didn't speak with words. He opened the sky, and I saw things the world isn't ready for. Time didn't exist here, at least not the way we understand it. The moment I stepped through the living doorway, it felt like I had entered a realm where everything paused, not in stillness, but in perfect attention. The space itself was aware, aware of me, aware of eternity, aware of the unfolding plan of God. I looked down at my body, or what was left of it. I had form but no flesh. I was made of something finer, something more true. Light, thought, spirit. I couldn't explain it, but I knew with deep certainty that I was more myself here than I had ever been in the flesh. There was no ground, no sky, just a horizon of presence, and every breath felt like worship, even though I wasn't breathing. I turned slowly, and there in the distance I saw threads of golden light moving across the void. They moved like shooting stars but left no trail. Each one pulsed with emotion, joy, grief, intercession. "What is that?" I asked without speaking. Jesus stood beside me again, though I hadn't noticed him appear. "Those are the prayers of the saints," he said, each one still echoing, some for generations. As he spoke, I saw something begin to emerge on the far side of the horizon. A structure, like a temple but more ancient. Its walls were made of shifting light. Its foundation seemed to hum with music that wasn't music. It was meaning itself. I felt myself being pulled toward it, not by force, but by belonging. "You are in the realm between revelation and release," Jesus said. "You're about to be shown what only a few have seen, the decision book." And that's when I saw him step aside, and the warrior angel approached. The ground beneath me shifted. I was no longer standing in the void. I was standing in a field of white stillness. No color, no texture. But it was alive. Every step I took sent ripples outward, like walking on soft water. Then I saw him, a being not of flesh, not of fire, but of authority. Massive, towering, eyes like molten bronze, hair that floated as if underwater, robes that glimmered with embedded stars. He didn't speak with his mouth, but his presence shouted. "You are not here as a spectator," he said into my spirit. "You are here because the year 2025 has passed the threshold." I didn't know what he meant, but I listened. Every fiber of my being was listening. "Earth is being shifted," he continued, "not by politics, not by power, but by alignment." Behind him I saw a sword, not held in hand but floating upright, as if planted into time itself. Lightning danced along its blade. "This is the sword of separation," he said, "and it will soon divide." "Divide what?" I asked. "Those who speak truth from those who live it, those who follow the Christ from those who follow the crowd." He stepped aside and motioned toward the temple ahead, now glowing brighter. "Enter, the decision book awaits." My legs trembled, but I walked. Each step forward carried the weight of unseen generations. As I approached the glowing structure, the temperature changed, not like heat or cold, but like spiritual pressure increasing. Every step closer, my heart pounded with something I'd never felt before. Not fear, not awe, purpose. At the temple gate stood another angel, this one different from the last. He wasn't towering, he wasn't intimidating, he looked human, but his eyes, they were flames, not decorative, not symbolic. They were burning with understanding, with judgment, with love so severe it could strip you to your core. "Jackson Cole," he said, "you've been summoned by decree, not by death. This is not your end." I didn't know whether to fall or run. I don't understand." "Why me?" He stepped forward and placed a hand on my shoulder. It wasn't heavy, but it anchored my soul. "Because you carried death without bitterness. You carried truth even in silence. You were chosen before your first breath." The angel turned and placed his hand on the door. With a rush of wind and thunder, the entrance opened. Inside I could see a single room, circular, with walls covered in moving language, Hebrew, Aramaic, Latin, English, and others I couldn't recognize. At the center, a massive book sat on a pedestal made of living stone. "This," the angel said, "is the book of Earth's final decisions." "What's written in it?" I asked. "Everything your world has chosen, and everything it has refused." He led me forward, and the book opened on its own. What I saw inside would shake everything I thought I knew about the future. The book wasn't filled with ink, it was filled with movement. Each page I saw shimmered like liquid glass. Words flowed in and out of the lines, glowing, rewriting themselves, not in chaos, but in rhythm. Jesus appeared beside me again, no announcement. He was just there. "These are the decisions of mankind," he said. "Every generation writes their chapter." He turned to the next page. At the top, it read, 2025. What I saw stunned me. I expected world leaders, countries, nations shifting, but what I saw was small moments. A mother praying at midnight, a young man deleting a private addiction, a teenage girl giving her lunch to a homeless man. Each act lit up the page like fire. "These are the decisions that shape the future," Jesus said. "The war in 2025 will not begin in palaces. It will begin in bedrooms, behind closed doors, in surrendered hearts." Then the page flickered and dark lines emerged. Not black, empty, These were the choices not made, the love not shown, the forgiveness not offered, the prayers never spoken. These absences open doors, he said softly, and the enemy does not need an invitation, only an opening. I watched as these empty spaces turned into shadows that slithered across the page. But there is hope, Jesus said, placing his hand on the page, because every day is still being written, and you will remind them of this. Then the book closed itself, and I knew the rest would be written by us. The book of Earth's final decisions had closed, but the air around me began to shift again. It started with light, not a beam, not a glow, a presence. The temple trembled. The stars around the dome above us seemed to stop moving, and then he appeared. Not the quiet shepherd we see in paintings, not the broken body hanging on a cross. This was the glorified Jesus, the King. The moment he entered, I fell flat on my face, not out of fear, but because everything in me knew it was him. There's no mistaking it. His authority doesn't need to be proven. It is. His robe moved like waves. His face, radiant like 10,000 suns, couldn't be stared at directly, and yet I could see him completely. His eyes, they didn't just see you, they read you, every thought, every motive, every hidden corner. "Rise, Jackson," he said. "You are standing in truth now." I stood, barely. My legs were trembling. My spirit felt like it was unraveling, but he looked at me not as a judge, but as a commander who knows his soldier. "You asked why you were chosen," he said. I nodded. I couldn't speak. "Because you are familiar with orders, sacrifice, and surrender. But what you saw on earth was only the shadow. I am the substance." Then he raised his hand, and the space around us peeled away. I was suddenly looking down at Earth, not the globe from a satellite, but a living world, beating, changing, and in the distance, something was approaching. "I am showing you what 2025 will begin," he said, "not so you can fear, but so you can prepare them." What I saw next shattered everything I thought I understood about time. Below me, the year 2025 didn't move like a calendar. It moved like a threaded web, stretching out in thousands of directions. Each thread glowed or darkened based on choices people made. It wasn't fate, it wasn't fixed, it was responsive. 2025 is a hinge, Jesus said. Not the end, but the beginning of the great sorting. He waved his hand, and I saw two main timelines emerge. One was full of light, small at first, almost fragile, but it grew stronger as people turned back to faith, to truth, to compassion. I saw families praying together again. I saw revivals not in stadiums, but in living rooms. The second timeline, darker, faster, louder, was filled with technological noise. I saw screens in every hand, people numb, divided, distracted. Entire generations flooded with spiritual apathy, dressed as enlightenment. "They are trading discernment for data," he said. I saw churches split, not by theology, but by compromise. I saw influencers become prophets of confusion. I saw truth called hate. I saw lies go viral. And in the middle of it all, people like you, like me, standing at the edge of both timelines. "Your generation will choose which thread to strengthen," he said. "The war is not coming. It has begun, silently." He looked at me again, more serious than ever. "Tell them that truth will cost more in 2025, but silence will cost their souls." I broke. I dropped to my knees, sobbing, and he let me. Because what was coming wasn't a storm, it was a reckoning. I had always believed that military power, wealth, and leadership would protect nations. But in this realm, Jesus showed me the true foundations, and how easily they will collapse. He pointed toward the map of Earth again. I saw flags, hundreds of them, rising like smoke from the land. Countries I recognized, some I didn't. One by one those flags began to shake. I saw America, bold, proud, and cracking. The strength of nations is not in armies, Jesus said. It's in the hearts of the righteous within them. I saw financial markets tremble like dry leaves. I saw governments try to hold on to control through fear and distraction. I saw leaders rise and fall overnight, not through war, but through spiritual exposure. He showed me how hidden corruption, long tolerated, would suddenly be unmasked, and those who had built influence without integrity would fall the hardest. My justice is not slow, he said. It is perfectly timed. I saw false alliances between countries, built on convenience, not truth. And when pressure came, they turned on each other. Even religious systems, ones claiming to represent Christ, began to crumble from the inside. Their outer beauty couldn't hold up to the fire. But then I saw small, barely visible groups, communities meeting in homes, in caves, in barns, and from them came a roar, a spiritual wave so strong it toppled structures built on pride. These are my people, Jesus said. They have no microphones, but they carry my fire. He turned to me again. Tell them not to trust in what can be shaken. Tell them to build what cannot be moved, because in 2025 every false thing will be tested, and only the rooted will stand. After witnessing the collapse of false strength, Jesus turned his face toward a hidden group, people I hadn't noticed before. They were scattered, not loud, not visible, but they glowed with fire. These, he said, are my hidden soldiers. They weren't pastors. They weren't celebrities. Some were janitors, nurses, widows, teenagers, men in prison, women who had never stepped on a stage, and yet each one had a mark, not visible to the world, but clear in the spirit. It pulsed like a seal etched over their hearts, faithful, obedient, undistracted. Jesus showed me how in 2025 the battle wouldn't be won by those with platforms, but by those with alignment. These people had learned to hear God in the silence. They didn't fear rejection. They weren't seduced by applause. They loved truth more than comfort. And their prayers. Oh, their prayers were like weapons. Every time one of them knelt to pray, I saw shockwaves ripple through the timelines I had seen earlier. Darkness would recoil. Deception would dissolve. Angels would be dispatched like lightning. The enemy cannot track them, Jesus said, because they don't move by ambition, but by assignment. He pointed toward me. You were one of them, he said, but I'm calling you back to remind the others. He placed his hand over my chest, and I felt that mark burn into me. I wasn't just a soldier anymore. I was a messenger, and when I woke up, that mark was still burning. The next part of what Jesus showed me shook me more than the collapse of nations. It was the church, not a building, not a denomination, the body, the global community of believers, the ones who claimed his name. Jesus looked at it, not with rage, but pain. They have fractured, he said, not by doctrine, but by pride. I saw it, clearly. Across the earth I saw gatherings of believers, some in cathedrals, some in tents, some in cafes. But as I looked closer, I saw an invisible line running through each gathering, a spiritual fault line. You couldn't see it with human eyes, but from where I stood it was obvious. The line didn't divide based on music style, preaching methods, or theological nuances. It divided based on intention. Those on one side gathered to glorify Jesus, the others gathered to glorify themselves. They speak my name, Jesus said, but many do not know me. He waved his hand, and I saw spiritual leaders preaching messages that sounded good, motivational, clever, polished. Crowds clapped, donations poured in, but heaven was silent. "There is no weight in their words," he said, "because they do not carry my burden." Then I saw a different group, smaller, poorer, in basements, under trees, in secret places. Their voices were not trained, their buildings were not beautiful, but their prayers reached heaven like thunder. "These," he said, "are my remnant. They will not bow to culture. They will not betray me for applause." I felt grief swell in my spirit. "Why show me this?" I asked. He looked at me with eyes full of sorrow and love. "Because in 2025, the division will go public." Churches that once stood together would split, not over minor disagreements, but over truth itself. One side will follow the cross, the other will follow the crowd. "Tell them to choose now," he said, "because the shaking has already begun." After Jesus spoke about the church, he turned toward what looked like a dark cloud rising over the earth. It wasn't smoke, it was screens, endless glowing screens, phones, tablets, billboards, smart lenses, even neural devices, small, sleek, embedded behind the ears of people across nations. I saw them all, entranced, not possessed, not robotic, just numb. "This is the great veil," Jesus said, "the distraction masquerading as connection." I watched as people scrolled through perfectly filtered lives, curated outrage, and endless amusement. They didn't realize that their spirits were starving while their minds were being fed algorithms instead of truth. But then I saw something that chilled me to the core. People were worshipping images, not statues, but digital idols. AI-generated prophets telling them what to believe. Virtual Christs preaching feel-good messages that required no repentance, no holiness, no surrender. "The deception of 2025 will not arrive through terror," he said. "It will come through comfort." He showed me how even Christians would be swept into this, following influencers more than scripture, seeking signs in TikToks instead of time in prayer. "The spirit of Antichrist will not look evil at first," he said. "It will look like progress, like peace, like acceptance." I watched as nations began installing digital systems that monitored everything in the name of health, safety, and harmony, but underneath it all was control. He showed me children being raised by screens, truth being rewritten by code, and a generation trained to believe that reality is optional. "But I have preserved voices," Jesus said, "and you will call them out of hiding." Then he showed me a young man in his room deleting his social media to seek God, a woman removing her digital implant and falling on her knees, a teacher refusing to teach lies. Each one broke the veil for their circle. "One by one they'll break the spell," he whispered, "if they're warned in time." And then he looked at me. "Warn them, Jackson." After all the visions, the nations, the church, the deception, I asked the question that had been burning in my soul. How can one person matter in all this? Jesus turned to me slowly. He didn't speak right away. Then he lifted his hand, and a single flame appeared, small, barely visible. "This," he said, "is obedience." I watched as the flame dropped into total darkness, and instantly the darkness around it recoiled. It didn't take over the world. It didn't light a stadium, but it created a perimeter, a circle of safety, a crack in the dark. "Now watch," he said. The flame burned steady, and suddenly another appeared, then another, and another. Soon the flames began to touch, to link, and the darkness, once endless, began to break apart like shattered glass. "This is what one life can do," Jesus said, "not by shouting, not by striving, but by simple, consistent obedience. He showed me an elderly man who had prayed every morning for 50 years. His prayers had stopped 3 suicides, one of which belonged to a future pastor who would one day spark revival in a closed country. He showed me a single mom who raised her children in truth, even when the world mocked her. One of her daughters would later translate the Bible into a restricted language, bringing light to millions. He showed me a prisoner who forgave the man who framed him, and that act of forgiveness led to an entire prison wing turning to Christ. Heaven measures impact differently, Jesus said. In 2025, the ones who obey quietly will hold back darkness more than the ones who shout loudly. I dropped to my knees, trembling. I had always wanted to do big things, but now I saw it's not about being seen, it's about being surrendered. Jesus touched my shoulder. Remind them that the greatest warfare is obedience in private. Remind them that one life, fully yielded, still moves heaven. And in that moment, I whispered through my tears, "Then use me." I stood in silence, the vision of the flames still glowing in my memory. Jesus looked at me with a depth that cannot be described, a love so heavy and so holy that it broke everything false inside me. He didn't need to speak. His presence said more than words ever could. But then he asked the question, "Will you go back?" I hesitated, not because I didn't want to obey, but because nothing on earth could compare to this place. Here there was no fear, no sorrow, no confusion, just peace, alive and infinite. I didn't want to leave. "Lord," I whispered, "if I go back, will they listen?" He stepped closer. His expression didn't change, but his eyes, those eyes, they burned with mission. "Some will ignore you," he said. "Some will mock you. Others will accuse you of lying." He paused. "But the ones who need it, the ones who are mine, will hear you." Then he reached out his hand and placed something over my chest, something I couldn't see, but could feel. It was weight. It was calling. "You will speak with fire in your bones, not to gather followers, not to build a platform, but to warn the chosen and wake the sleeping." I asked him one more question. "What if I forget? What if it fades?" He smiled, not the soft smile of a friend, but the confident smile of a commander who already knows the outcome. "You won't forget, because the fire I've placed in you is not for memory, it's for mission." Suddenly, I felt the pull, the one I had felt once before when I first died. But this time, it came with understanding. It was time to go back, time to speak, time to burn. The transition was instant, like being pulled through time in reverse. One moment, I was standing in eternity. The next, I was choking on dust and smoke. My lungs screamed, my ears rang. I was back on Earth, back on the battlefield, alive. I was lying in rubble, the result of the drone strike that had killed me. Everything was scorched and scattered, debris around me, metal twisted, fire still smoldering. My vision blurred. I saw medics running toward me. I heard shouting, "He's breathing! We've got vitals!" But I couldn't respond. I was too overwhelmed, not from the pain, but from what I had just carried back. There were no words in English for what I saw, no doctrine, no theology, no sermon could explain it. But something, someone, was still with me. The fire in my chest burned hotter than any explosion, not physical, spiritual. It hadn't dimmed. "Sir, can you hear me?" a medic asked. I turned my head slowly, barely able to whisper. I saw him. The medic looked confused, but something in his face shifted. He nodded slowly, like he somehow knew. As they loaded me into the helicopter, I looked at the sky and whispered, "I'll tell them, Jesus. I'll tell them everything." And I knew, from that moment forward, my life would never be normal again. If you're hearing this now, it's not by accident. My name is Jackson Cole. I was a soldier, trained to fight earthly wars. But when I died in a drone strike, I was shown something no tactical briefing could have prepared me for. I saw Jesus Christ. I stood before him, and he showed me the spiritual war already raging over our world, especially in 2025. He told me to warn the church. So here it is. The next year is not just a new season. It's a dividing line. The shaking is already here. Everything false will begin to crumble. Nations will be tested. Churches will split. Technology will disguise truth. Comfort will challenge obedience. And yet, in the middle of the storm, Jesus is raising up a remnant. They won't be loud. They won't be celebrated. But they will be marked by fire. You might be one of them. You won't need a title. You won't need a stage. You'll need only this: a willing heart, a quiet obedience, a fire that doesn't burn out when no one's watching. 2025 will demand a decision. Every believer will have to choose convenience or conviction, compromise or consecration, the crowd or the cross. You cannot hide behind religion anymore. You cannot depend on popularity or politics. Jesus told me this plainly: the ones who will shine in 2025 are the ones who bow now. So I'm asking you, are you ready to obey when it costs? Are you ready to speak truth when it's not welcome? Are you ready to walk away from the world and into your assignment? Because the line has been drawn, the harvest is real, the battle is spiritual, and you were born for this hour. My name is Jackson Cole. I died. I saw Jesus, and now I live to tell you it's time.